You give so much. You listen. You care. You show up. You tell yourself that being there for others is what makes you good, what makes you worthy, what gives your life meaning. But when the night falls and silence settles over everything, there's that emptiness again. The same quiet fatigue you can't name. It's not just physical. It's a spiritual tiredness. Like your soul has been quietly leaking all day. And you wonder, why does kindness leave you so empty? You've told yourself that love means giving. That to help is to heal. That to be selfless is to be good. And maybe that's true, but only partly. Because somewhere along the way, helping became surviving. It became your way of holding the world together when everything else felt uncertain. You learned to earn love through usefulness. You learned to feel safe by fixing others. And now, every time someone needs you, you answer even when you have nothing left to give. What you don't see is that this endless giving comes from an old place, a childhood echo. Maybe there was a time when the only way to feel seen was to be needed. Maybe love was inconsistent and you filled the gaps with effort. You became the caretaker, the mediator, the one who smooths every edge and carries every storm. You learned that harmony is safer than honesty. That being good means being tired. Carl Jung once said that what you most need will be found where you least want to look. And perhaps what you least want to look at is your own need, the quiet longing to be cared for. Not because of what you give, but because of who you are. You help others because you remember what it felt like when no one helped you. That memory, buried deep, becomes your compass. You sense other people's pain before they speak it. You feel it in your chest, in your stomach, like it's your own. Empathy becomes second nature, but it's also a form of merging. You blur the boundaries between your emotions and theirs until you can no longer tell where you end and they begin. This is the unseen weight of empathy. It's not that you care too much. It's that you don't yet know how to care without absorbing. You open yourself wide to others, but you forget that an open heart also needs shelter. You think you're strong because you can carry it all. But strength, real strength, is knowing when to put something down. You may not realize it, but the exhaustion you feel after helping someone is not simply about energy spent. It's about identity. When your sense of self is built around being the helper, every act of compassion becomes both a gift and a transaction, not with them, but with your own self-worth. Helping becomes proof that you matter. And so, you keep doing it, even when you're collapsing inside. Freud once wrote that we repeat what we don't repair. In relationships, this repetition takes many shapes. You find yourself drawn to people who seem to need you, people who are broken, unstable, unavailable because helping them gives you purpose. You see potential in them the way you wish. Someone once saw potential in you. It feels noble, spiritual even, but beneath it all lies a quiet plea. If I can heal them, maybe I'll finally be enough. Oh, and so you pour. You pour time, attention, love. You listen to A.M. You soothe their anger. You explain what they can't face. But when they leave, when they recover or drift away, you feel hollow. Not because they took too much, but because without their need, you don't know who you are. This is where the draining begins. The act of helping becomes a form of self-erasure. Each time you give without balance, you trade a piece of yourself for belonging. You mistake exhaustion for love. And yet, your body remembers. It tells you through headaches, restlessness, sudden irritation, or the strange sadness that comes after doing the right thing. And Eric Fromm once said that immature love says, "I love you because I need you," while mature love says, "I need you because I love you." For many helpers, the line between those two gets blurred. You love others through their pain, but often it's the pain itself that gives you a sense of closeness. You bond through wounds, and when the wounds fade, so does the connection. The truth is, you've been trying to heal the child inside you who felt invisible. Every person you help becomes a mirror, reflecting that child. You're not just helping them, you're trying, unconsciously, to prove that your compassion can rewrite your past. But the past doesn't dissolve through others. It only dissolves when you turn that compassion inward. When you give yourself the same understanding you so freely offer everyone else. It's hard to admit, but part of the reason you feel drained is because your empathy has become survival. It's how you control chaos, by becoming the calm. It's how you earn affection, by being indispensable. It's how you keep abandonment at bay, by staying useful. But usefulness is not intimacy. Service is not connection. Sometimes, being the healer is just another way of staying unseen. You might notice how, when you're around certain people, your energy collapses faster. The way your body tenses, your breath shortens. Your mind begins scanning, what do they need? What are they feeling? You go into emotional labor without even realizing it. You read their moods like a script you must memorize. You anticipate their reactions. Adjust your tone. Soften your words. It's empathy on autopilot, and it costs you more than you think. Jung believed that relationships are mirrors that reveal the hidden parts of ourselves. The ones we deny, repress, or overdevelop. For someone who's always helping, that hidden part is often resentment. You suppress it because it feels wrong. How could you resent being kind? But the resentment is not against others. It's against yourself for abandoning your own needs in the name of goodness. The draining you feel after helping is your psyche's quiet protest. It's the soul's way of saying, enough. You cannot fill the world from an empty cup. You cannot save others by losing yourself. You cannot keep giving love that you do not. First anchor in your own being. But knowing that doesn't make it easy to stop. Because helping feels like love. It's the one language your heart speaks fluently. When you pull back, guilt creeps in a voice that whispers, "You're selfish. They need you." That guilt is not the truth, it's conditioning. It's the echo of years spent equating self-sacrifice with virtue. Nietzsche once warned that those who fight monsters must take care not to become one themselves. In your case, the monster isn't evil, it's depletion. It's the slow erasure of the self behind endless compassion. And yet, even Nietzsche saw the beauty in struggle. He believed that suffering, when faced consciously, births wisdom. The same applies here. Your exhaustion is not a flaw, it's a message. It's the soul saying, something has to change. You've probably noticed that after a long conversation, where you comfort someone, you feel an odd silence within you. It's not just tiredness, it's the loss of emotional presence. You've lent out your consciousness. You've stepped out of yourself to meet another's pain. And when they leave, you take a moment to return. But not all of you comes back. That's the unspoken cost of deep empathy, fragmentation. The art, then, is not to stop helping, but to learn how to stay whole while doing it. To help without disappearing. To love without dissolving. To be kind without being consumed. Viktor Frankl, who survived the unspeakable, wrote that meaning comes not from comfort, but from choice, the freedom to choose one's attitude in any situation. You, too, can choose how to give. You can choose to help from fullness rather than emptiness. from love rather than guilt, from presence rather than fear. You might ask, how? It begins by noticing, by slowing down enough to see when you've slipped into saving mode, by feeling the tension in your body that says, I must fix this, by listening to the fatigue that follows every time you say yes when you wanted to say no. Those small moments are the gateways back to yourself. When you begin to honor them, something changes. The world doesn't fall apart. People still find their way. You realize that you were never meant to carry everyone, only to walk beside them. And when you truly understand that, helping becomes lighter. It becomes a dance rather than a duty. You give without losing. You listen without absorbing. You love without breaking. Because now, you're not pouring from an open wound, you're pouring from a healed heart. You've spent years learning to read others, their moods, their silences, the way a pause can mean pain, or the way a smile can hide a storm. But in doing so, you stopped reading yourself. You forgot the language of your own fatigue. Somewhere, you convinced yourself that understanding others was more important than being understood. You became fluent in everyone else's needs and a stranger to your own. And now, when you're alone, you feel uneasy. The silence feels too loud. Because without someone else's emotions to manage, you don't quite know what to do with your own. This is what emotional overextension does. It builds an identity around care, then leaves you hollow when the care is gone. It's a quiet kind of loneliness, hidden beneath good intentions. Freud would have called it a repetition compulsion, the need to recreate familiar emotional patterns. Even when they hurt, you help others because it mirrors a story your nervous system already knows. One where love is earned, not given. You repeat it not out of weakness, but out of hope that maybe, this time, giving will finally fill the emptiness it once created, but it never does. Because no amount of external gratitude can repair an internal wound. Helping becomes a loop. You offer, they receive. You heal, they grow. And you, again, are left standing in the aftermath, proud, maybe, but tired. Your heart has given more than it was ever given. And that imbalance is what your exhaustion is trying to tell you. It's not selfishness to feel drained. It's the body's truth whispering that you've crossed a boundary your mind refused to see. Sometimes, you feel it physically, the way your chest tightens after comforting someone who never asks how you are. Or the way your breath shortens when you're about to say yes to something that doesn't feel right. These aren't small moments, they're messages. The body speaks the language, the mouth won't. And it keeps speaking until you finally listen. There's a peculiar sadness in realizing that people love the way you make them feel, not the way you feel. That they come to you for peace, for advice, for light, but rarely to share the weight. You start wondering, quietly, if anyone sees you beyond your strength. And sometimes, when you're too tired to keep pretending, that question aches like a wound you can't touch. Jung once said that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Maybe that's why you feel drained, because you've been communicating through giving, not through truth. You've been showing love instead of expressing need. And deep down, you crave someone who listens the way you do, slowly, without judgment, without trying to fix. But the irony is, people like you rarely allow it. You're so used to being the strong one that the idea of being cared for feels dangerous. You mistake comfort for weakness. You say you don't need help, and yet, every time someone asks, "How are you really?" your throat tightens, because you wouldn't even know where to begin. Helping others isn't wrong. It's beautiful. But when it becomes your way of avoiding your own pain, it turns into a shadow. You project healing outward, so you don't have to face what still hurts inward. Jung would call this the unconscious in disguise, the part of you trying to find wholeness through others. But wholeness doesn't come from saving. It comes from sitting with your own unfinished story and finally saying, I matter. 2. There's a quiet power in learning to pause before you say yes. To ask yourself, am I giving because I want to, or because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't? That single question can change everything. Because beneath every automatic yes is a fear of rejection, of guilt, of losing love. But love built on exhaustion isn't love. It's dependency wearing a kind face. Fromm believed that real love is rooted in freedom, the freedom to give without fear, and to withhold without guilt. When you start practicing that, your relationships change. Some people will resist. They'll sense the shift, the boundaries, the calm refusal to overextend. But the ones who truly care will stay. They'll adjust to the new rhythm of mutual respect. And those who don't, they were never nourished by you, only fed by you. You'll notice how much of your helping was born from anxiety, the need to be useful, the fear of conflict, the discomfort of saying no. You'll begin to see that much of what you called compassion was actually control, trying to manage others' emotions so you could feel safe. It's a hard truth to face, but a liberating one, because once you see it, you can choose differently. The turning point comes quietly. Maybe one day, someone asks for your help, and for the first time, you pause, you breathe, you realize you don't have to rush to rescue. You can listen without absorbing. You can care without collapsing. And that small pause, that sacred breath, becomes the beginning of your return to yourself. It's strange how foreign self-care can feel to those who've built their worth around others. Rest feels like guilt. Boundaries feel like betrayal. Stillness feels like absence. But over time, something shifts. You start noticing how peaceful it feels to sit in your own company without the weight of someone else's story. You learn that solitude isn't loneliness, it's recovery. It's your soul re-inhabiting the space it once abandoned. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." For you, that why is evolving. It's no longer about being the savior or the soft place to fall. It's about reclaiming your energy as sacred, not as currency for connection, but as the essence of your existence. You begin to realize that saying no doesn't make you less loving. It makes your love real. The exhaustion you once called kindness slowly transforms into clarity. You see that helping others doesn't have to mean losing yourself. You start helping differently, not from emptiness, but from fullness. You become the kind of presence that doesn't rescue but reminds. You teach others by example. That healing begins when we stop expecting someone else to hold what we refuse to face. The moment you choose yourself isn't a rejection of others. It's an act of truth. Because only when you are whole can your compassion truly heal. Until then, it's just your pain dressed in light. There comes a moment when you finally stop trying to earn peace. You stop trying to manage the chaos of other hearts and begin tending to your own. It doesn't happen dramatically. No breaking point. No final goodbye. Just a quiet realization that you cannot keep losing yourself in the name of love. You begin to see that your energy is not infinite. It is sacred, finite, human, and protecting it isn't selfish. It's survival with grace. You notice the stillness that once frightened you has become soft. It no longer feels like absence, but presence. You start to feel the weight of your own existence returning. The breath slows. The body loosens. You realize that the fatigue you've been carrying wasn't just exhaustion, it was grief. Grief for all the times you abandoned yourself to be enough for someone else. There's something profoundly healing in that recognition. It's like watching sunlight touch a room you thought would always stay dim. You begin to understand what Jung meant when he said that wholeness is not about perfection, but about integrating the forgotten parts of the self. And one of those parts is the self that needs rest, kare, and silence, not because you've earned it, but because you're alive. The world taught you to confuse love with labor, to believe that the measure of your goodness is how much you endure. But you are not here to be endlessly available. You are here to be real. And real love, the kind that nourishes rather than drains, begins with honesty. It begins with the courage to say, "I can't right now," without guilt. It begins with knowing that your boundaries are not walls. They are doors that open only when your soul has the strength to walk through. Freud once wrote that the energy of life, or libido, isn't only sexual or relational. It's the essence of our drive, our vitality. When that energy is constantly redirected toward others, it withers inside. To restore it, you must redirect some of it back to yourself. That's what renewal means. It's not withdrawing love. It's remembering that love includes you. You start to recognize small shifts. You no longer rush to respond to every crisis. You breathe before you act. You ask yourself if your help is truly needed or if it's a reflex to feel worthy. You realize that silence can be just as healing as words, and that sometimes the most compassionate act is to let others walk through their own darkness without you lighting the way. This is how maturity feels, not colder, but calmer, not detached, but discerning. You don't stop caring, you just stop collapsing. You understand that empathy without boundaries is self-neglect, and that love without balance is bondage. Fromm once said that love is an act of will. It requires discipline, patience, and courage. To love truly others or yourself is to choose awareness over impulse, presence over performance. You can only give from what you consciously possess. And that's why tending to your inner life is not an escape from the world. It's preparation to meet it with truth. Over time, you'll feel the difference. When you help from fullness, it feels effortless, not draining, but expanding. You leave an interaction feeling more alive, not less. You notice that compassion, when rooted in self-respect, it doesn't cost you energy. It multiplies it. Because you're no longer giving to be seen. You're giving because you already see yourself. Nietzsche once wrote that the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. For you, the tribe is everyone's expectation, the belief that goodness means exhaustion. But your quiet rebellion begins when you choose rest over pleasing, silence over explanation, boundaries over burnout. It's not a loud revolution. It's a sacred one. The kind that happens in your breath, in your heartbeat, in the spaces where you finally stop apologizing for existing. You begin to notice beauty again, the kind that isn't tied to achievement. The way morning light falls on your hands, the sound of rain that asks for nothing. You realize that life was never asking you to fix everything. It was asking you to experience it. Viktor Frankl wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. That space is your rest. It's the pause between someone's need and your instinct to give. It's the place where choice lives. You've had that freedom all along. You just forgot you could use it. And perhaps that's the deepest truth. Helping others isn't wrong. It's sacred. But it becomes holy only when it's free. When it comes not from the wound of needing to be enough, but from the wholeness of already being. When your love is no longer a currency, but a current, something that flows naturally, returns naturally, and never depletes the source. Now, when someone leans on you, you no longer crumble. You stand soft, steady, grounded. You listen not to absorb, but to witness. You offer warmth, not rescue. You give because your soul overflows, not because it's empty. And when the conversation ends, you still feel like yourself. This is what healing looks like, not a sudden light, but a gentle return. The way the ocean always finds its shore, the way your breath finds its rhythm after years of holding, the way your heart finally beats for you. So when you feel drained after helping others, remember, it's not a failure. It's an invitation. Your exhaustion is not weakness, it's your inner self asking for attention. It's life reminding you that your kindness must include you. Let yourself rest. Let silence wash over the parts of you that have been speaking for too long. Let your heart learn that love doesn't mean depletion. It means presence. It means truth. It means giving only what doesn't cost your peace. And one day, you'll help someone again. But this time, when you walk away, you won't feel hollow. You'll feel whole. Because you'll finally understand you were never meant to save everyone. You were meant to stay alive while loving them.